Wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Esoteric Radio. Today is Sunday, October the 2nd, 2011, and I'm your host, James Sevan Bomar III, and it is a pleasure to be with you here today to introduce today's show, which is a premiere show. It is the premiere of the Universal Current show, in which we are just going to be exploding into our next level of existence. And we're going to show the world that, to the contrary of the direction that they think things are going in, things are actually going in a very, very pleasant direction for those that are tuned into universal energy or real current. And so that's really what what I would say is it's hard to limit this show at all, so I'm attempting to find a word. So the whole truth here, that is exactly what we are going to be bringing, and we're going to be doing that also according to what's happening right now. So you can also utilize the Universal Current show, which we're going to be attempting to broadcast every 2 days, giving you information about everything that's going on in the reality from a day-to-day standpoint, and of course our extra twist of occult on top of it, which helps things to be seen clearly. And so that's really the tune for this. And so we're just going to get right into this. We only have an hour and a half in today's show, and we have quite a bit to cover. And I just want to say personally, it's been really amazing in linking up with the universal energy of this whole planetary system that we're on now. And just to have the opportunity to explain to you how to do that is indeed a pleasure. And I want to just express to everyone that's out there that I have a really, really true intention to bring to you the method of exactly how to get yourself to a more expanded, more ascended, more balanced whole level. And that's my commitment to you. Today is actually going to start off a little weird because we're actually going to talk about stuff that's really going on in the real world. If anyone's, of course, listened to the past shows, we tend to go to the Innerverse when we discuss what's happening. But because there is an ebb and flow to this reality, and there's many people in this reality that do need assistance with understanding what exactly is going on so that they can make their choices, it's important for them to hear about things that are going on around them, to know what it all means. That starts us off with all this other course are right around the corner, and many people are speculating on who's going to. And of course, we see that there's a few people on the bill, but the pop in our circles, of course, because here we practice high levels of knowledge, esoteric knowledge, etc. But there are also people that have the gold green spin and the spin of still not understanding what politics is about, and those people Ron call. For knowing the code to pull apart any name, it's very simple with especially the small letter word. So when you get the word, you get a word into the papacy. And by saying that, and so it's very important for people to realize. Even in the new movie they have that just came out called Paul, in which the Gray or AWAS or the ET is featured with a very nasty attitude and actually explaining his involvement with the government, etc. So it's really out there blatantly in the movie. I believe that movie Paul. Paul. So the thing is that now Ron, R is a 9, and On is what they call the 9th sun. The main thing about this code is that people will be able to crack this code, and they'll be able to figure out, okay, well, that's what's going on with me. So please understand that if your name happens to contain any of these components, it doesn't mean that it's all over for you and you hear the Damien music going on in the background. It simply means that you have some stuff to transmute, and that's the reason why you're here. People need to understand that our names are worn like clothing for us. But just as clothing becomes a custom, clothing becomes a costume, what happens is we become somewhat cloned. When you wear the same name as another being, then there's a very deep connection there. Now, people need to understand that there's a deep connection with all of us anyway, because we're all born on this planet. So no matter where you're from before, this one, the real one, what's happening in front of you, we all are a family. So this allows us to look a lot deeper into the division that has been taking place on the reality, and to pinpoint even the division, to understand exactly where we've been divided or split or crossed. Because remember, there's crosses running around everywhere. People are wearing swords around their neck. They have no idea what they're doing, but there is something that on a great deal of individuals appears to be clasped onto them. And we'll talk about that later in the show, which we'll be getting into, getting the monkey off your back. Now, it's interesting because there's some notes to this show, so people are allowed to follow along. Those notes are available on www.resistance2010.com, which is our website. And you can actually click on the post related to this show, and I did actually copy the notes for this show. So they're pretty cohesive, unlike some of my old notes in all caps, like I'm screaming at you, and, I'm just hammering out what's coming across my mind at that point to give people balance. So this one actually has notes, and so, of course, where we're at is we're still at the Clinton, Bush, Obama, Paul folks. Now, what people will understand is that once Granddaddy Bush came into office and had his regime, there was a lot of things that weren't finished. But they knew they could not finish it to the level in which they were doing things and how they were conducting their office. So they balled in the saxophone playing Clinton, Mr. Saxon. So that made people believe that, okay, Clinton's going to do something, he's totally different, he's totally the opposite. So they balled into the Clinton thing and then watched Clinton actually under the table pass all the bills that allowed, when they cheated, they rigged the thing, that they brought Bush Jr. in to finish off Bush Sr.'s work after the paperwork cleared through Clinton. So then people were like, okay, you know what, this is crazy, we see the whole scam, now we need something completely opposite. So they bought Obama. Completely opposite of George Bush would be Obama. So he comes in with the swagger, and then people begin to buy into that. And then we reported this first, and I got called all types of names because we have one of the first videos of Codename Mavis, which was basically releasing the information about Obama and his occult connection. And what ultimately ended up happening is that now humanity is once again in another sway, where they've learned a little bit through the New Age movement and through a little bit of occult and a little Crowleyism and a little Nazism and all the rest of the stuff that's passed around in the propaganda. So they've learned a little bit from that, and now they figure they want to Ron Paul because he's willing to speak up, he's willing to, even he's offered really no spiritual solutions. So we can see the same thing is going to happen again, because with the Ron Paul situation, a bigger letdown. Because inside there's no heart. An individuals that are actually connected can see if there's a real heart inside. This becomes the most important thing. There's a lot of beings here that are just learning through their connection, if they can even reestablish or establish a connection with this planet, how to be real. This planet gives you life. So anytime something has severed you from that, or you've severed yourself from that, etc., that means you begin to die. So, of course, we can explain why people die right there, because of their lack of connection with the earth, which has the secret to immortality. So, to connect that back in, one has to get away from politics altogether, or Poe. Remember, they're popes. So, playing around with Jesuits is not a really good idea if you're not spiritually inclined right now. So stay away from politics and get more into the Innerverse, connecting with the planet you're standing on. Because here's the most interesting thing that I discovered. What you're actually looking for, you're standing on. Like all of your meaning of life, you're actually standing on it. If you're standing outside on the ground, you're standing on it right there. So anytime you actually go to look for it, you can already know you're going to go in the wrong direction. Because anytime you're looking for something you're standing on, you can see how that would lead to a high level of confusion. So thus we've been confused. Now we're having the opportunity, because of our expanding of consciousness, to get unconfused. Because really, confusion is the Khan's fusion. And we already talked about Khan and who he is. His fusion, how he puts things together. Puts things together through division, chaos. It's fractalized, so when the form is built, it's not perfect. So this is what we're coming to correct and are here to correct. And I say that in twofolds, because there are beings that are already here doing that, and there's some that are still trying to make the decision on how they're going to do it and when they're going to do it and where they're going to do it. The main thing is to bring your skill, your most sharpened skill, the thing you know that you're good at, And you bring that to the forefront. Don't bring, I'm not decided yet, tell me what to do. Don't bring all of that, because that is not the type of faction that we're running here. We're running the faction where you self-substantiate. That's what all this information and stuff has been about, the elements, the supplements. It still requires you to actually put it to use. So keep moving. Remember, Oprah Winfrey really endorsed when Obama came in. Now, it's going to be interesting to watch who begins to endorse Ron Paul, like who's like right there. And the information, of course, is probably already out. I just have tons of stuff to immerse myself into besides this. But it's becoming important because it's about to become a current affair. Meaning that it's going to change the current. So when a current affair is going to happen, we are responsible for reporting that current so we know how to divert that current if we have to, or we know how to move our paddle, for better lack of words. Move your fin. Actually, that's what it is, because everything here is related to the sea. So when a current comes, if you move your fin in one direction, you glide perfectly and let the current take you. And you go where you want to go with the current, actually. You turn to how you can project. However, if you get washed over in the current and then you're like flipping upside down, etc., that is not a good state, and that's, of course, the state that we see humanity in now, that the current is taking them where it wants them to go, not where they are guiding themselves to go and them using the current as a propelling system. Because remember, the Earth is a huge current, so it can propel you into higher levels of consciousness, and they guarantee it's not something that works on man's system or my system or whatever. That's how it works. So the key becomes your technique. Connecting with this. So Oprah Winfrey, now look at the name. Winfrey means one Frey. A Frey in Norse is a goddess, basically. So I can show you literally how when they, and this is they, the controllers, the ones that are unbalanced, when they pick someone because they have a certain level of knowledge of who will be what, by their birthday, their name, etc., they know how to take that person's energy and power and to turn it against them. Because they actually show them a mirror. But the reality is they know how to turn it against them. So people like Oprah Winfrey, who be very powerful on the high levels of spirituality, is being used like a red queen in the United States. And there's many others, but she's one of the major ones because her run has been way longer. Her run has been like Michael Jackson's run. Something that talks about an ancient level of connection that had to do with melanated individuals being able to connect really deep with what? The planet. Now, the non-melanated individuals are actually learning how to do that now and are already establishing that connection, and it's just amazing because we're actually seeing non-melanated individuals blend with melanin. That's what the fractal is reality of having those children from many different nations and colors blending together and sharing in this connection that this planet has, because the planet has an orgasmic connection. Everything is like we're humping each other. And whether a person can see that or not, and how they feel about that, and all of that starts to govern how their world is run. If they're unhindered and they're basically free, then their energy continues to flow, and they're always vibrating at a high frequency. And so this is something that is a benefit of the attainment of this knowledge. So what we have is we have many individuals. I'm just using Oprah as an archon, or archetype, which she really is, and showing how many people fit these archon archetypes, and they still have an opportunity to do one thing, but they still choose to do another. That's what the most important part of finding. Negative energy in your name, negative energy in your decisions, etc. First of all, it gives you a really good reason on why you haven't hit the high level yet. And the second thing is that it starts to allow you to be able to understand that that's you. It's a mirror. You're seeing in the reality what you have going on inside of you, and it still needs to be fixed, whether you are going to avoid it this life or not. I always say that rescue is not redemption. Rescue, if someone coming to rescue you, still means you had a situation that you could not handle and you could not deal with. This would still put you basically the next run into a situation that you cannot handle. You still need that something watching over you your every single move without you being able to flow freely because of the danger of you being allowed you doing that. So this is where one steps out of becoming or being a child and steps into becoming a vast being. Like they keep saying, well, you should be like a child. You should be like a wise man. You should be like, listen, you should be whole. You're everything. Don't secular it off to one particular thing, because then, like we talked about on the earlier show, you start to take the tree of good and evil, where there's only duality in there, versus the tree of life, where there's just all the information about what's going on. It'll let you know as long as you can handle it. Now, how this show is really going to be a lot more relative to what we're going on daily is that many people have been sending me emails about traveling and where to go, where to relocate to, etc. And they've, of course, seen Costa Rican videos and see that truly that it's very lush and tropical here. The coast is rich. As the actual word Costa Rica was, they say, the exclamation of Christopher Columbus when he sailed on this side. They said, wow, the coast is rich. And they set up certain things here, and then they kept moving toward the United States to their scumbag takeover. So, but the byproduct of United States has been that most of the people were set up in the United States to cultivate this new world, as they called it. The other countries were like reserves. They were like, Costa Rica plays as like a reserve because it has many reserves for animals, many endangered species. It has, of course, fruit and vegetable that you never see anywhere else before because they're extinct in those areas. And so you have that kind of ecosystem. But the most important thing to also show to everyone now is like the situation that's going on in the Amazon. Also from my dossier from Luis Ho in Bolivia and Brazil, which are the troubles that are plaguing everyone in regards to this super highway that they're building, and right through the Amazon forest and through these different areas and these Indian reservations and not even reservations actually, but national parks, etc. And so this becomes something where you do still consider, okay, if I move abroad, am I just moving away from the problem, or am I going more into action, or what can I do? So all these things should be considered, and that's what we're going to talk about in travel. It's not just going somewhere, I'm running, I need to be safe. But no, running to where you are actually going to be more active. It's like go somewhere not so you can just be put to sleep, or you're sent out to pasture, you go to Paris and then tuck in with your grandma. No, go somewhere where you're going to have life, where there's something for you to do, something for you to connect to. So all that will be discussed in our traveling abroad section of the new show. Even also Greece, from my understanding at this point, had switched over to a barter system. I remember just recently Greece was actually about to go bankrupt if they didn't get bailed out. And I guess when they got so close to getting bankrupt, everyone started coming up with really brilliant ideas, even though I heard they got bailed out still by, I believe, China. The reality is that because they got so close to going bankrupt, they started to instill plans of how to trade and do things even without currency. So that would be very interesting for people who want to look into that. Now, we're going to get into something a little bit more serious. We're going to talk about getting the monkey off your back. It's a very interesting term. Most people are very familiar with it from different perspectives, and I even think there was actually a song. Hopefully in the interactive show we could actually play a little clip of the song sometime just to bring it to people's memory for a moment. But the reality became we were able to really gaze upon the auric field of the human to see exactly where there were problems. And in that knowledge, what was gained is the knowledge of what I just call the shell. And what it actually is a concentrated energy field, but that energy field is alive just like any other energy. And what it would do is clasp itself to a certain part of your consciousness, because it's not your complete consciousness, thus it cannot surround you completely, but it clasps itself onto one part of you. And what this would do would be just like anything else that was a ball or a sphere. Once you clasp a small part to it, probably something the size of a pyramid, and you spin it, you would notice it would be off center. It would actually have a wobble. So people need to understand the meaning of some of what these pyramids are doing, because they're causing certain balances and certain imbalances. And, of course, my theories have always been that the pyramid itself that we're looking at fell from the sky as a tool and burrowed itself deeper into the crust, because the bottom part of the pyramid is very long. It's like a spike. And this may be, what they called, what I'm believing is an, which means those who just came from the sky. It's very interesting because if you use the word an or even Anunnaki from my understanding of etymology at this point, it just means they came from the sky because there are so many beings that came from the sky. You've not really narrowed it down at all. And so that's why it's very easy for, like, the Sumerian culture, which is very, it's just pre-dynastic, but not as old as many of the Lemurian levels of spirituality. And this gets us right into the energy grid. The Lemurian level of technology was a symbiotic connection with this planet when its phallic principle was still in play, meaning that this was the Lemurian stage was when the fertility gods were actually roaming on the earth, and the connection of energy then was completely organic through the organic system. I believe that the most of the information that we have about this particular place is just within the etymology of the root word Pangea. We know that Pan was used as the fertility symbol, and of course Gea or Gaia is the name of the earth. So these two beings being together at one point and all land masses being together. Now, of course, there was seeming to be a removal of this component, which I believe is the moon, and it's actually docked out, and it needs to be somewhere in this planet, but it's like a piece been taken out or one that's been cut or Skyped from the planet. But again, the energy system of this planetary system that we're actually dealing with is highly connected to, well, let me just recap here because I kind of got a little bit off of balance here myself. Let me look at my notes. Okay, so we're going to attempt to connect how these unbalanced entities unbalance your auric spin and how Earth's balance itself and its energy system is off, and how you can help to correct that balance. That's the whole title of what I'm going to attempt to explain here. So, the Earth's if you notice with the Earth's energy, it was 360 degrees, which is a perfect spin or actually a spiral because we're moving. That's what makes a circle become a coil, because if you're moving, we will have that graphic on the next show. We may do the show again because there's some really interesting stuff in here. But when you see the coil or the spiral moving, you see the real sign of energy. And this is what we begin to understand as being the difference between anti-Euclidean geometry or non-Euclidean geometry. And what this means, before everyone says, oh, no, that's too much, I don't understand anything about that. Euclidean geometry is basically the Platonic solids and how they're saying that this universe is constructed, and it's mostly with straight lines when they draw out their dodecahedrons, etc. Anti-Euclidean geometry, which is definitely correct, shows you that if you take a sphere like the Earth and you put a triangle over it, it won't look like a triangle with straight lines. It'll look like a triangle with bent edges. And this means all the world of difference when you're talking about energy, because a triangle with a bent edge it makes a spiral, while a triangle with a straight edge, those straight edges just shoot out. They're just angles. They go infinitely. And this becomes important because if you are ever in a reality that's built on squares and triangles, then the energy is just going out. It's not being cultivated. It's not being revved up, for better lack of words. And so that actually right there becomes one of the biggest mysteries to this world, that statement. To understand the difference between an arc and how an arc can make something spin versus a straight line just sends out direct energy and it goes into infinity. We know that this direction of infinity, if we want to determine into our language, because infinity starts to become physics, etc., this word infinity just means life continuously, things going on, but you still never really know. It's like a stasis. You still really never know what's going on, and you just are in this field. This is because there's always something down and up, as we talk about. There, just as deep as it's down, which is infinite, it's high. So that's also when you're rolling in a straight line, you can be going forever. When you're spiraling, you're building energy, and you actually start to explode your energy out. So you basically start to send a wave. So this becomes, if for someone who has studied sculpture and architecture, etc., they would be the most abreast at this type of language. Like this would be like one-on-one. They would be able to even explain it much more precise than I'm able to explain it. But how the curve equals a certain type of bend, and that type of bend determines how much energy you can push out. And this is what generators and everything are about. So this reality in particular, the way it's being constructed by the archons or the archangels or the angels, what they're doing is they're sending out straight lines so that our energy just goes out. So we're going to talk about how to correctly cycle energy with the earth, because it's a task. It's something that you have to do, and there's several components to it. Mainly, I have it down to 4 components. First, you would tap yourself into the earth. This is the first thing. You have to be able to draw energy from the earth. And this comes with the actual establishment with the earth, a relationship. Once that relationship is established, then you can literally feel through the root of your feet you being able to pull energy from the earth. Now, before you would ever pull energy, you would need to know where that energy is going and what you're doing with it. And that's why it's so important to always stay in action, because you can always stay with a lot of energy. But what happens is that you have an opportunity to cycle this energy, withdrawing it from the earth and then having something that you're doing with energy. So if you're a healer, and I'd love to just use in this sense, because the healer is definitely one of the most highest position available on this planet. Because when you heal someone, they never forget. But this becomes the next step to what you have to be able to do. So whatever your skill is, when you draw up the energy from the earth, you utilize that skill. And then, when the person or the being that you're using that skill on becomes affected by it, they should definitely feel like a wash over them. A relief, a smile, a thank you, something of this nature. This is called, this would be very similar to a person shining back on you. It's like because you've now put them in this different state. In this new state, they actually look at you and they shine it on you like, thank you for doing this for me. Now this becomes the key point. I will show you the due path, or the F, or the fork in the road right here. Now the witch or the warlock keeps the energy. They take whatever the person actually gives back. Sometimes they even ask for money. They ask for different things. And then they keep it. The one who is pure and completely connected sends the shine back to the earth. And that corrects its balance a little bit more. Because who's actually responsible for making all that happen is still the earth. Like when you start making it happen, then things can be you can be able to power yourself up off of yourself. However that will work. Like we said, we went really far in that direction and found out it's impossible. It doesn't work. However, when you're actually dealing with earth and you're correcting the beings and correcting the cycles, etc., now you're actually put yourself into an immortal position. You always have something to do, because there's many things that need corrected, because there's always many different creations. And those creations need to be, they need experience. And they would get that experience from you as the different forms in which you manifest in. Now, we'll talk about these manifestations, these different lives, and what are they really about. The first part is I first talk about how, because I'd like to introduce the solution before I introduce the problem. I'll talk about how to correct the problem. The problem is that if we believe, for whatever reason, that we are the ones emitting, we are the ones starting, we are the first. If we believe that for whatever reason, we live life from that point in error, because we should always understand that we are in the act of being a reflection. We are not completely we're not completely the emanator yet. That's what's happened in this reality. That's when you actually start to break down species and you make each individual part of that grow into the whole again. People always like to talk about how in the hologram, that in each and every single point, there is a total picture of the hologram. So inside of us, they're saying that however they connect humans with holograms, they're still saying that inside of us, in our DNA, is the code for everything. We just would need to be able to access it. That's what they leave off there. Your accessing it comes over expanse of your experiences. So what literally happens is, as you have the opportunity to get more experiences, you start to work more with these infinite energies that allow you to gain this high level of perception and reason and what we would call immortality, because you have something to do. You're not just idle and just there. So I will talk about also that there's ancient symbolism that relates to this planet that is very important to understand, because these ancient symbols are being utilized every single day to control a certain level of our consciousness. And I just wanted to briefly talk about the W and the M. The W is a symbol of horns. And so anything of that kind of nature, a person understands they're getting the opposing energy. M is the symbol of mountains or rest, as they would say, something that is principle. Because for some reason, which I now know because of mineralogy and studying the Earth, in every mountain cluster there is a large quarry of a certain kind of element, whether it's granite, sometimes it's crystal, sometimes it's whatever. But when you see a mountain, inside of that mountain, everyone always says, I wonder what's inside of that mountain. What do you think? Like inside of the middle, there's a compression of all the mountain's gravity weight forming something in there, more than likely crystals, etc. So they knew in the old days that the mountains had something plentiful in them, and that became the symbol of the M. And that became the symbol of mom, that became the symbol of how to get mature and nurturing, and all of that was just encased in one symbol. So you can see how when they start to take that symbol and put it on a McDonald's, they're saying, hey, it's nurturing, but come eat your mother, because that's why they serve so much beef and cow, because they understand the relationship to the cow, like the Hindus and the Indians do. They understand the relationship with the cow, and a very interesting part of the beginning of humanity's evolution, as they call it, but why a woman has milk coming out of her breast and why a cow has milk coming out, but why do not other animals have milk sometimes? So these are all the deep connections with nature that she is more than willing to teach the individuals that can enroll in those courses. Playing around in the droid world. Now, this gets us into the next topic. Playing around the droid world. Now, we see that the Lemurians were tapped into the organic system. They didn't like droids. They didn't play around with droids. Now, anytime I say droid, I mean all electronics and technology and machines. Because remember, machines don't have to contain electronical parts, but they're like a preliminary cycle to what happened once the droids were made. So in the Atlantean idea, which remember, A's came from the sky. They like to call themselves Aryans. They don't like the ground. They don't live on the ground. So they don't connect with the ground Kundalini force. So because of that, they call themselves princes. They don't touch the ground. So because of that, the Atlanteans bought in their technology from the sky. And like we talked about last week, the pact between the United States, give us more technology, we'll give you the world to the grave. Just the idea of asking for inorganic technology, and whatever being would offer that to you would definitely not have your best interest in mind, just from that alone. Because inorganic, anything to an organic being kills it. While if they're all inorganic, it'll actually give it life. And so thus we're watching a new race be given life because of their relationship to the computer, while organic race they're attempting to obliterate. But the real part of organic is that organic can't be obliterated. Whether inorganic understands that or not, I don't believe so. Organic is immortal anyway. You will always exist. It's just about what state you're going to be existing in. This is what we're guiding here at the resistance, and we're working on that in real time. So this Atlantean technology was the high levels of taking the crystals, which were already here on our planet, something that we connect to in a different way, and mating that with their electron, or their elect, or their L, and their straight angles, and making it inorganic, and attempting to allow it to do the same thing that our, well, not even the same thing, but our functions in this reality, but through electronic level, like a phone call. Generally, back in the days of the connection, when you wanted to call someone, you simply did it with your mind. That was it. Everyone was connected. So when you wanted to hear something, you already had opportunity to tune in and tune out. Like, it was already connected. You're already equipped with it. So this meant that anything that was coming to do externally only had the idea of bringing us out more. And there's been definitely some experiences here in the external world. Like I talk about when the umbilical cord is clipped, it may show still that we weren't supposed to be born external. We were internal beings, but it happened. So now we are regrouping based on that. And we also talked about in the video how still when a child's umbilical cord is cut, it's still connected ethereally. Just like if a person's arm is cut off, they still have an astral arm there. So this becomes very, very important to understand the invasion of the ones that came from the sky and what they're implementing into this reality in real time to get people to basically conform to their inorganic level or see what their future will be. Now, that's why I leave it open like that, because because we're not functioning as a group anymore, like a whole family, our world. There are now small groups of individuals that understand all this knowledge, and they're working together to actually maneuver themselves. It's like a ship. It's very important to understand your existence here is like a spaceship or a ship in the sea, and you have to avoid getting run aground. There are rocks and jagged things as you are sailing. But if you understand the stars, for better lack of words, the astrology, if you understand the energies, then you can guide your ship not into the energies, but away so that you can catch the current to propel you further through this sea. That's why the deepest teachings were of a person learning how to navigate this cosmic sea, or how to use your astral vehicle. That's what we've termed it now. But there is so much more to it than the limitations of the words that we can place together. It requires for a person to begin to experience it. And that's what this information is for you to get clear on what exactly is happening. Start to seize back your mind. Understand that you need to steal your mind back. Because once you steal it, you'll hear the other ones, how they talk. When they insert jealousy, when they insert anything to do with dissension, that stops your thought for a moment. Even a simple thought like, do you feel that? When you're in a deep meditation, you're in there, you start to vibrate, then someone says, do you feel that? Now, if it's you in that body, of course you feel it. So who is asking you, do you feel that? That's the evidence that there's an archon, a being that has classed itself and is talking. Now, once you can actually identify these particular areas, especially in your consciousness, this being begins to get booed. That's what I like to call it. Once it starts to say anything, all the other faculties of the body leave and say, oh, shut up, we don't want to hear that, we know who you are. And there starts to become wanted posters around your body. If you see archons anywhere around, let us know and we'll deal with them immediately. We'll remove them from our consciousness. It's a very, very interesting thing to understand about how exactly this world works. Now, magnets. This magnetic attraction to things that you need or desire or want, etc., how we pull it in, how it starts to sync up, is what we have to get more familiar with. Because we see magnets at times, or magnetic. Anytime I say that, a person gets a glimpse of a magnet. But magnetic is not just a magnet. Remember, magnetics is not just about magnets. Light attracts insects like a magnet. They just fly right into it. They don't care what's going to happen. It could be a flame, or it's normally a hot lamp, and then So where is that? What kind of magnetism is this then? And how many levels of magnetism are there? This becomes a very important subject for one to begin to study in their mind, to see how what other forms of magnets are available. And that's why when you become very full of light, we just have to use this term even though we know it's corrupt. When you're very full of that, then it actually begins to attract other individuals who know that they need that. Now this becomes where you have to really stretch your stuff, basically. Because now here's a being that is coming that needs something, but you know you need to help them. But you don't need to help them to the level where they start to take you out. So how do you do it? It's like it becomes an opponent and a partner. So what you do is you factor in heavily now your connection with the Universal Mother. Because first of all, to go in, you're going to need some other kind of energy. You're not going to need your brain. That's not going to do much. You're going to need a kind of energy that transmutes some of the things that are hanging around. And you know why they're hanging around. You don't even have to get analytical. I don't think Jane has any. Cut it out. It doesn't work like that. Before you know you don't have them, you have them. And to get rid of, what are they? Urges, habits, hobbits, I call them. Smaller versions, monkeys. The key to the moon works here, how it works. What do they use? Spirits. They're showing you everything all the time in these magical books. They call spirits forth and they have them do things. That's all a part of magic. So a monkey, or what is the key? A monkey, or the key to the moon, is a spirit. Spirits and sending spirits, and that's why they use the moon to bring up spirits and to do different things. So it's all connected. But who is doing it, and how much are they doing, also needs to come into factor. And we see in the reality is right with the heaviest level of occult introduction, period. It's bringing things out that this world does not need to see. So that means that that's where we are in real time. And the real being on this planet is ready to deal with it from that level. Until then, one is somewhat still fake, a clone, a assimilated Enneagram prototype. Because there's no connection to the organic one. There's only connection to the inorganic ones, the artificial one, AI. So that's what Atlantean idealism is about. Now, hopefully, the Atlantean civilization, which is here, it's definitely resident in Atlanta, contains a lot of melanated individuals. Remember, Boule actually calls themselves the archons and arpusa, and they know what that title means, as much dedication they have in there. And Bill Cosby seems to be very smart, and he's a part. So the reality is that I hope personally, at this point, they've realized that they're already transmuting and rendering aid, meaning that they're actually going to stop their archon ways, help their children out, and go to a next level with this. Even though they haven't made that decision yet. I cannot feel that coming across the galaxy. But because they haven't, then they're next, because they have to sometimes be forced. You know how sometimes when people are making a decision, if they have a lot of time to make it, they'll take that time. They'll be like, well, we don't have to make a decision now. You sure? Or should we reveal all the mysteries to the humans about everything that's been going on? No, I don't think we should do it right now. Think about how much stuff we still have to build with our diplomatic relationships with China. Like, they go into many different, let's wait. Even though we don't have the time, because we're not going to be trapped in their time cycles and them making the decisions, especially those that are listening to this conversation. So the reality becomes, look, you either make a decision or I make it for you. That is the type of beings that are here on this planet now. They understand how to deal with these beings to make them either make the decision, cease and desist, release the ship, get us to another level, or there are beings here ready to activate and metamorphosize into other things to get that to happen anyway. What else did humanity think was going to happen? They're in a cocoon type phase because they're being limited. There is 3 fields that you can at least identify on this planet that are in place, that are available to be tapped into as far as energy is concerned. There's an input-output situation going on with 3 different fields here on this planet. One of them is the artificial electromagnetic field that is around the outside of this planet, created by, I believe, satellites, electronics, and many other different things, but we know that it's there. And it's shaped like a soccer ball. It's pentagrams and hexagrams. And the numbers and the geometry and everything will let you know who's affiliated. Now, there's one that's then directly inside of that, and that one actually is the Earth. And we now know that in our particular segment of the galaxy, where we're existing on this particular system, the system seems to be broke. It's trying to correct itself, but many of the lines are cracked. That's where the humans come into play, ground crew. They're like bridges, where the energies are cracked, and you can always tell that because the areas are just really defunct of any type of spiritual activity. The activated human moves in and actually connects the bridge in that area, thus powering that area back up in order to allow the complete the planet to power up again on our organic grid. That's how you break an artificial matrix. When it'll happen or not, we're working night and day to accomplish that. And I will really just ask everyone to heavily consider what's really being said and how much of this information is getting out. And also our ability to even continue to push out this information here at the Resistance with, there's 3 of us here, but, it's very tight around here. But this is important, and we know it's important because there's a lot of time and attention that's been put in it by the individuals that are here, not just in the matrix of this world, but also in the Innerverse. It's very important for people to understand that. When we explain, and that's what the next thing that we're going to do, people are going to explain how the resistance affected them or how spirituality affected them, you will see very clearly from that example how many people have been affected by spiritual knowledge, information, and application in real time. It's important, I believe, also to show everyone that so that they understand that it's not just them. So this is going to actually start on Monday. Luis is actually responsible for putting that together, and he's almost complete. He's going to bring his out first, which is just awesome. And we're going to get way more people involved. And like I said at the beginning of the show, I have full intentions to bring all the knowledge and the application and the secrets here to this planet so that it can correct itself as my responsibility for putting more work into help correcting the balance. Because when we correct the balance, the closer it gets, remember, there's a point where the closer it gets, it starts to really move more rapidly. When you see a top spinning, the easiest thing is to get a top and spin it and watch it. And then watch when it starts to slow down, how it starts to wobble. But when it starts to speed up, it corrects itself. And that's what we're doing. The planet Earth is actually speeding up, but that speed depends heavily on our consciousness. And because archons are running around attempting to bring all the energy down, now they have their current. So they've been bringing the energy down. Like, it's not something that they're planning on doing. Like, people are saying, well, when are they planning on doing something with the currency and changing the currency? They don't really. The idea is to make people scared as shit, believing that they're going to do it. And then they're benefiting more, the archons are benefiting more off of that than they are benefiting off of taking the currency out. Like, and what they can turn it onto then, chips and all this stuff. That's not what energy they want. They want the negative, oh my goodness, the economy is falling, what am I going to do? They eat that. And so that's why the economy is still it's falling, but it's like falling slowly. And then subject to be boosted again if they decide on another plan. So that's where one can separate from that type of roller coaster. I used to call it the emotional roller coaster. One check from being ruined. That, separating from that and tapping right into a universal current that is responsible for powering things anyway. And that's why the message that I'm bringing forth today, I feel completely invigorated by it and completely confident about it because it's just what's happening. You can see it outside. What is powering that tree? How is it growing? That is what becomes the real reality here. So we're going to take a little brief break, And we're going to come back. We're going to answer some questions because many people had questions last show, and they asked the questions toward the end, or some of the chat boxes we were able to monitor at the end. But we do already have one call coming in, but we're going to take that call when we come back, or forward, as I always say. Thank you for tuning in to Esoteric Radio. All right, we are forward, and I wanted to thank everyone for holding for that moment. We have some callers that have called in and have some questions. I wanted to give out the guest call-in number now. It's area code 347-996-5688. That's 347-996-5688. You can call in and you can get your mysteries demystified. And I would definitely take this opportunity to do so because we have the Universal Mother on deck answering questions and really, really making it clear to us on what we need to do in order to get tapped into inexhaustible currency. So caller, you're calling from the area code. Oh, also, we just asked callers to turn your, if you can, to turn your audio down somewhat so that when we open up the line, we don't get that echo. And so we're going to go ahead and start now with a caller from the area code 505 area code. Caller, you're on Esoteric Radio. How can we be of assistance?
This is, good day, Sevan. It's Nima. And to jump back a little bit into the actual foundations of the lines is very interesting. When you put anything up against a circle or a sphere, I saw how you began to break that down. And maybe some of what you were looking for as far as a potter's perspective or an artist's perspective is the straight lines are definitely intrusive, and you don't see that anywhere in nature. And they're not tempered. As the energy builds, the curved lines on all of those journeys, the energy builds without coming actually to a complete stop. And if you look at certain sciences like, I guess what you would call feng shui, they learn to harness the way current moves with these energies in their architecture. And with the M and the W, basically goes to Ma and Wa, like matter and water, or mother, or like you said, mountain. And if you notice how when you actually use those letters, Ma would come from the end with the lips and move outward, as into Wa would be the actual opposite. Being with this, with the curve and the straight, you have the digital world, like, to dig it all, to mine it all. And that's just what seems what the inorganic world is doing, is just stripping away from the organic world. And the man and plant, they both start in the womb with the seed. The earth is the womb for plant, mother is the womb for man. And they have the symbiotic relationship. And we're so far off to where we're actually putting our quote-unquote waste in water, and it's slowing down that process of merging with the earth and feeding the earth. And when we actually are quote-unquote waste is symbiotic with the plant's waste. And so you can see these symbols that we're supposed to live symbiotic with plants and organic nature. And you spoke about how they're coming to terms with, I guess for lack of a better term, like knowing that they're losing, like these archons. So why is it that they're slowing down? Have they figured out that their whole mission is exactly to merge with this organic life, or have they forgotten? And that's, with all that in mind, that's what the question is coming to, is it seems like the archons are just slowing down. They can't beat down the organic life, the primal life, the earth life. And if you have anything more to expound on that, it would be greatly appreciated.
I mean, for sure. First of all, I wanted to say thanks for calling in, Nima. I mean, just what you shared there is a lesson within itself, and we'll definitely be able to reflect later on because, it's just very powerful words just coming from just such a very vast being. I would definitely say that the Archon's dilemma, which is also the Atlantean dilemma, has come to somewhat of a screeching close because the ones that are perpetuating that are still organic beings. So it's almost like there's many people who are realizing within their minds how they operate. And so even if a small piece of a clock starts to come out of the whole thing falls apart. That's their problem with, it's like if you build something on a certain foundation, and then that foundation is removed for whatever reason, the whole structure has cracks and holes in it, and it's stuff just topple over. If any wind comes, it'll blow down. So and that's, of course, also somewhat of the architecture. So the reality becomes when certain people are moving out of positions and not doing it anymore and saying different things that are contrary to what they've been saying before, meaning like you have people that were on the news and doing one level of work, and now they're like conspiracy theorists now and things of that nature. So when those pieces get removed, then they're forced to implement another plan. As the archons always have plans, but the reality becomes is that humanity is so much more expansive than the mind of limitation. And this is just like a fact. Anything that's limited doesn't have much energy because that's why it's limited. We know that the archons are limited because they're playing around in our reality. We are not limited at all as beings. We only can be limited. So we're like on the opposing side. It's like that's why I was saying because we are born inside of the organic structure, we got the nurturing from this planet. So anything outside this planet didn't get that nurturing. Anything outside of this is inorganic. It's not real. Everything inside is real. It's like the guts to it, as they call it. So that's what redundifies in these fractals, and that's what I started noticing. The type of magic that was being used had to do a lot with mirrors. And how you can, if you just tell a person that that's you when you look in the mirror, here, in this world, and you see yourself as this being with the two eyes and the ears and the head, anytime you're in the dream world and you happen to run into you again, and you don't like what it looks like, because it's like maybe some monster or something like that, and you decide to kill it and you decide to run from it, you're running from yourself. It's just, in this world, we only look one way, and that's why it's like a big shattering of this mirror that's happening right now, where we're not reflecting anymore. We're becoming emanators. The whole reality was reflecting 100% because everything that goes on TV with their program, and they're looking into a mirror. Look at the TV. It's a mirror. Look at the computer. It's a mirror. It shows you, if you look close enough, there's actually you back there on top of your desktop. So there's a whole subliminal game being played, but the game's over because it's still somewhat of a plan, but a plan is almost like a game. It's not the real thing. Nature doesn't have plans. Nature is. It's like all the extra components that we have to take sometimes to pull things apart don't exist in nature. It's already there, even sometimes in liquid form. So this is what we have an opportunity to expand into. So whatever the archons were offering those that were actually tapping into them, it's not entertaining anymore. Like the ideas of the fancy car and the ideas of all the girls, and it's not even entertaining anymore. The ideas of absolute power and controlling things and beings and spirits. There seems to be now so much disarray in the spiritual world. Many are starting to consider, well, should I really be so hasty to go to the spiritual world then? What about Earth? Can I just fix Earth and then I can kind of live here and, clean my stuff up? See, that's what we're talking about, because why is it's like a life of running. If you spend a life of running rather than fessing up to anything, you can already understand what direction and how your direction is going to be. And so that's why I believe the reality is also built for us to run somewhat in circles. We still generate energy, but it's almost like running in the wrong direction. As someone was just saying earlier today, looking at some of the older cultures that were implemented, it almost seemed like they were vastly perpetuating the people to go in the wrong direction. It was a shift in consciousness, like they call a pole shift. So whoever the archons 100% are responsible, and to use that name again is a Greek name. So people are like, well, what do they call it in other languages? Because surely the Greeks did not invent just everything and who these things are. But it's important to use that name because it starts to give you a real direct glimpse at what we're talking about. Like, who is the cons of the arcs, and who are the arcs? Like, why does, like I was looking at Chinese the other day, why is there only intrusive marks and no circles? You see what I mean? And what would be the consciousness of a person who is raised on intrusion? So I watched their program, and that's how I understand that it's running. It doesn't allow me to have to believe in it. And that's what also I was saying about the Universal Mother. A person doesn't have to worship the Universal Mother. They're already connected to it. It becomes silly to think that one has to get ready to do some type of obeisance and sacrifice, etc. It just means you get to work. And it always pays, for better lack of words. Meaning that when you have a shaky employee with false currency, counterfeit AI, it sometimes may fail. But when you're dealing with pure organics, that it doesn't fail. It doesn't have that component to it. And that's what why humanity won't fail itself. That's what we're really dealing with here. Like, humanity is not going to drop the ball on the whole situation here with the Earth. It's going to pick it up. When it chooses to do that, and I like to use this kind of terminology because this starts to only separate it per person. Because it's already happening for many of us. Like, man, it's just been amazing. The information plane, essence plane, and all this that I've been tapped into is way more vast than I could expect it. And it still allows me to come in front of everyone and to transmute some of the information and give it in a way where people can somewhat grasp it so that they can immediately go into action. It's like, okay, now I understand what's been going on. I'm gaining balance. I'm gaining bearing. So that's what's happening. I think Luis pulled a little article today about Russell Simmons, and we know he's definitely an archon running around with Kimura. And all these names, definitely, if you look them up, you'll find that they really, really connect to many of these older entities. So when they transmute, it'll definitely be in-game. So the reality is that he was like, oh, people need to start stepping up, rich people need to start stepping up to the plate and paying off a lot of this debt or helping a lot with these problems. So what you'll start to see is that there will be some that start to do the Ron Paul. They're not completely convinced, but they don't want to be on the side of the ones who are completely, I think they call it I don't want to use the term leftist or rightist, but basically individuals who are tapped into like the George Bush mentality. They say that there seems to be a huge demarcation in their archon world between those who operate like George Bush and those who operate like the triad. Now remember, both of them are definitely diabolical things going on all the time, but they still have, there's a code of ethics, if there ever could be one, with some of these organizations, like what you see with Samurai. There's a heavy code of ethics and a heavy system to still do the darkness. So this is the reality of also. So let's talk about also what's going on there, because it's not even relative to what's happening in our reality sometimes, because there's other realities that are pushing forward as more powerful magnets, which is like China. So what is really taking place in China on a spiritual level? Now, the reality becomes is to understand the connection with Japan and AI. It's very important to understand that in the etymology of the word, even Japan itself shows an extreme masculine nature with beginning the slight levels of the corruption. What I still believe is that the off balance of the earth causes the off balance in all the beings that are here. So even if it's Father or essence of Father and essence of Universal Mother, etc., it still becomes slightly distorted when it enters into our field of perception. So this leaves us with the responsibility of definitely perfecting our own reality. I know I definitely answered the question, and I definitely have another call on our line, but I just really wanted to bring it full circle and say on the spiritual level what's happening in China is a lot of their spiritual beings, which really reside more in Japan, if you understand Lemuria and the different islands that broke off, like Madagascar and different islands like Hawaii. Well, actually, Hawaii was more related to Atlantis. So these different islands that broke off, they're like star clusters themselves, if you understood the correspondence between the Earth and the sky. And these star clusters, like Australia, which means star, these star clusters are becoming some of the most important places for the activity that we're seeing on our planet. And they're transmuting also on a spiritual level as this whole correction of what we're calling the planet. But me personally, I know it's the universe as we know it. Like if we would know the universe, we see the 7 arcanic spheres, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, and the rest of the beings, the stars that are in that web. But the reality is that it's the Innerverse. One cannot even get into great detail about explaining just what's in there because we're new traveling. We haven't even got our rigging straight. We're run aground. Like the reality is that even humans being on the earth and walking on the actual physical land, because of their sea aquatic-like nature, this is already showing that what Darwin really was, or the land of Dar, which is Ethiopia, not Ethiopia, but the land that Cain went to, and Wen, which we know means one, that actual connection with the knowledge says, okay, well, that's why they still follow maritime law and the sovereignty. The maritime law was where everyone had obviously come from, the sea, the earth, space. All of it in retrospect was the same thing, because it was like you were still gliding through it, just as when you move to another place. You are now moving your vehicle or vessel to another location, another constellation, for better lack of words. And so that's really what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and take another caller, Nima. I do definitely appreciate you calling in. And I would also like to connect with you. I know we had connected really briefly on Facebook, but we're going to be having a meeting also for those who would like to participate. This meeting is really about delegation. We're going to hold it at least twice a week, and it's going to involve members that actually want to get involved and have ideas about exactly how we can implement certain things. And we also have a lot of stuff that we're working on and we need people to help us with. So that also becomes a really good meeting to participate in, not only to assist, but also to get information about what's going on the planetary system in real time, because we do have access to that information. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the line again to caller on area code 434. Caller, you're on Esoteric Radio. Thank you for calling in.
Honest, I have two questions. The first one, if you're speaking from like a shamanistic point and you're working with spirit guides, how would you know the difference between the moon spirits assisting you and, that which is maybe organic, that's spirit guides?
What really happened was you saw that there was definitely a balance being kept. Like any time there's two opposites, the balance in the old days on how they would do it as far as a shaman was being kept. So this started to allow people to come together in groups. Like let's say there's 8 people on one side and 8 on another. So it's almost like basically you have to. They call this trying the spirit. It's almost easier to do this in this reality, because remember, it's almost important for me to understand how are you making contact with these spirits. Like, what is the procedure in which they come? Do they come and go by lead, or is there a particular system that's being used? And that's kind of why I can't answer the question directly.
Mhm. Okay.
Because answer your. To clarify, I cannot really tell you what a spirit is going to be, because there is many different kinds of spirits. There is positive spirits if you're saying it's a spirit from the moon, one has to realize the position of the moon in retrospect to the earth. The moon is not here in earth right now. See what I mean? So the other thing is that you can always tell if it's a positive influence or a negative influence by ultimately what it's saying that you should do. Like, what information is it really bringing across? That's what becomes most easy for us. It's like to shut out all spiritual contact is literally like to turn off all of your antennas, so that way you can't receive anything. The reality becomes is when it's saying something to you, like the guy's email in the chat box, so does this mean the archon is in your mind? What it's actually instructing you to do, and when it's instructing you to do it, even if it's just interrupting you all the time from higher states of stillness in your mind, then you understand it not to be positive. Because a lot of times it's just talking and talking and talking and saying different things about different kind of stuff. But the reality becomes, how much of that is applicable to our reality? Like all of what we're talking about, especially here on this show, is applicable to the reality right now. A spirit can be bringing information. And this actually brings us to an important point. I'm glad that you asked that question, because it was something that took place earlier in the week. So on my way to the bathroom, and I got some very interesting information about that spirits have all of the information that we are being told right now that we need. Meaning that many people are trying to find all different kinds of information, like who to talk to and who to call upon and all this, and they're seeking those answers from the spiritual world. And the spiritual world actually has those answers, but those answers are not necessarily what we need at all to understand the bigger scope of things. And those spirits are also looking for knowledge that to let them understand the bigger scope. Like all the stuff that we know here, they already know because they're looking at it from the outside looking in. And many of them were here. So they're like, yeah, when I was there, I did not even know that this being showed up in the form of another being. And they didn't know all of that until they're able to see it from the other side. And they could see exactly how it works with humanity and the spiritual contacts and the larger beings, etc. So that information is still only one thing to retrospect to a spirit, because a spirit needs to understand how to get to actually overthrow its archon. In the spiritual world, if it has died binded to one of these beings, chained to these beings, it needs the knowledge of how to break that chain and go into what they call the light, because they're chained down in darkness. So you can realize, again, so what kind of information should a spirit really be bringing then, if it's supposed to be bringing information that is somewhat useful? Either that or it needs help. And that's as much as I can really lend on that whole topic. What I would highly just suggest is just analyzing what's coming across. See what happens when you try to focus and concentrate, like in a meditation. And you start to feel you change frequency, like getting into a different state of consciousness, like higher, and you can tell when your energy starts to build up, and then see if it moves in the mind then, like saying something to you. Because that's how you can start to identify who's who and what's what, by your mission, what you're supposed to actually be doing, and how much these beings are relative to helping you accomplish that. See what I mean?
Okay. All right, my second question is, when you stated that you would take the energy from the earth and you would heal, and once the person is appreciative of it and smiles back at you, how do you bring that energy back to Earth?
It's a visualization. You can actually radiate out to everything, because the Earth is all around. It's not just underneath our feet. That's why you don't have to necessarily even be standing on the ground. Like, I can even connect to my crystals in the room. Right outside your window, generally, there's a tree. So you can always cycle that energy between that and the individual. Now, what really becomes the depth level of it is when you're actually able to do it to such a high degree that you start to transmute the person right then. Now, this becomes very interesting, because never believe that when you are cycling that energy that it's not working, because it is 100% working. However, how much power an individual really has in understanding of how to cycle that energy gives it the time, if you want to call it, like how long does it take to work. So is it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and the person's like, hey, when you did that to my hand, it feels better now, but right at first it didn't. Or is it right away where they're like, oh my goodness, he just miraculously healed me. But the reality becomes is how much of that current do you have running through your body? And this current is real. Like, you can actually feel and tap in. You'll know when you're tapped into this current. The main thing becomes, it's not just a meditative technique. It's how you're acting. It's what you're doing in the reality. And that's where the meditative techniques and all the different type of pointers that can be given in the spirituality still are, they're more of still at service to the person actually being able to accomplish the proper mental, spiritual, and physical state. And that's just the reality. So it requires your full attention, your full interaction with it. And it's a lot of purging that takes place, and a lot of explanation of different things. And it's a very intimate relationship. And it's really the only person that sometimes we have ever been able to talk to about certain things has been our mother. So you can imagine your mother times infinity and what you can really express to that. All of what you know is not fair, the answer is there on why it happened. And then after a while, you just stop needing answers, and you start understanding the place that you're actually in as a very young being courted by very vast, intelligent beings, like all the way around. Like, even the archons are not dumb. They've implemented their whole society into reality and turned everyone against the universal mother. That takes a lot. So to realize still what is going on around us is to gain such a high level of knowledge, because I believe that the universal mother is definitely giving us an opportunity to learn off of what the archons are doing and learn off of what she is doing, in order so that we become this more advanced being, which is more connected to that triangle that I'm speaking of. It gives us the ability to power ourselves. Once we understand it completely, we become complete. And all I see here in this reality is two. I see the deuce. I see that that this reality is at the second level, and there's the next level that we have an opportunity to go to is 3. And if you look at all the symbolism, even the peace sign, it's just 2 fingers. It's really division. It's a peace. They tell you what it is. It's not connection. It's 2. It's division. So when leading from the 1, the only thing that generates from that point is the 3. The 2 doesn't. The 2 is very similar to just straight lines, and that's what they call their parallel. So these become more of the knowledge that one can immerse into, that is just very simple to kind of suppress a lot of the rhetoric that goes on within a lot of the spiritual community, within and without themselves, like inside and outside of themselves, and get focused on exactly what it is that we're doing here. We're correcting Earth's balance. In the beginning, they said Eve did something. Whether people believe it or not doesn't matter. The omen is still in woman when the word is written. There is the mystery, meaning myth, not mystery. So the reality is that this mystery is there's an imbalance going on with our universal situation, and we have to correct that, and we correct that by our actions. And so that's what it is, being put into action and doing things that are actually going to correct that balance. So, also, do you have any more questions, sister?
I think you've answered it.
Okay.
That's it for today.
Okay, so I do thank you for calling in to Esoteric Radio. And also, I just wanted to give in that call-in number one more time. We've got about 10 more minutes left in the show. It's area code 347-996-5688. And we have one more caller. We're going to go ahead and take that caller now. It's from the area code 807. Caller, you're on the line with Esoteric Radio. Thanks for calling in.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for giving out the information, man. Please keep giving it out, man, because the information that you're giving out is very helpful. Like, me just reading the information is actually opening my mind. So I just want to say I appreciate it and keep doing what you're doing.
Man, I do appreciate that so much, and I do want to let everyone know that I do my best to translate this information, and sometimes I pause and sometimes I forget things, and it's only because of the sheer amount of the information that must be translated from what looks like a picture to me in my mind to text and speech. And sometimes it becomes very difficult when you see the whole picture, because it kind of bottlenecks when you're attempting to bring it out of your mouth if you can't articulate the words properly. But I just, I know the more and more that we experience this and get it inside of us, it allows us to be able to be more fluent at expressing it. And that's also what the free flow of the Kundalini energy is. What you will notice with the individuals that do have that free-flowing energy is that they can consistently bring the knowledge and bring the energy with no interruption. And so that's also one of the main things about the resistances, is that it's real time. It's not just someone saying, I'm already at this level and I complete the whole thing and I'm here to instruct you. It's actually, I was going to upload all of the recordings, because there's just so many of them that we have now. And I was going to put as a warning on top, warning, contradictions. This is a real-time experience. It's a real thing. It's like, if you're experiencing something in real time, there are going to be times you think things are like this, and then no one can tell you they're not this until you get the memo, and it's like, oh, okay, I can see in multiple ways how they're not really that. So then you have a choice at that point. You have a choice to remain a fool, basically. You have a choice to remain not believing the truth, or you have a choice to accept the truth. And I want everyone to know that where my mind is always going to go for truth, even if it means that I may have done a long span of time of not what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel like that all of that still has a benefit. Even like the trips through Christianity and the trips through Islam showed me all of what I'm expressing now. So having not been through it, how can one actually describe it? And so that's definitely an awesome interaction.
That's kind of the things that I've been going through. And I'm only 22. Since 16, I've been kind of aware. I went through the Yahweh thing, the Christianity, on to metaphysics, and that just led me into the occult, esoteric knowledge. And I'm just happy for it. I'm happy for the knowledge, man. Thank you.
Man, like I said, you're more than welcome. The knowledge does bring life when it's about truth. It does bring life. And anything that's not knowledge or is artificial, you can tell it brings decay. And that's exactly what the reality of our world is. It's just great that we have this opportunity to actually see it now. And that's just what's so expansive to me all the time. I just get really excited when I think about it, because I understand the state that even humanity was in about 10 years ago, when none of this was being discussed. It was still going on, but they were completely cloaking it. No one was really leaking it that much, especially other countries that knew about it were even suppressed from entering into the actual media system. So now, all of a sudden, it's too many holes to patch up. Like Nima called in earlier and said, well, what's happening with the archons? Well, the reality is it's like the moment they patch up one hole, 3 more spring up. In the moment that, and so they're like, look, we're going to waste more time attempting to suppress all these people from the knowledge than maybe working on another plan. So they've given up on suppressing people with the knowledge. You see what I mean? And so that's why a lot of the information that's been coming out to us has also been just of such a high level of, it's like a floodgate of information. But information is one thing, essence is another, and that's the main thing that the Wholeness Foundation and the Resistance is allowed to share, is not just this information about what's going on in this world, but also how a person can apply it to their lives and be able to transmute into what they are really wanting to be, or actually what I say already are. It's like break off some of those shells. Actually, it's a different perspective sometimes. I see it, like I said, as pictures. A person being able to come out of that shell and see that everything that is on them is like a new skin. And that's what's going on here.
I'm actually current with the level of knowledge that you're putting out, and I'm also going back listening to the archive blog talk radios. Like, I was listening to Infinite Waters last night, and I think that was some high-level information that you were releasing on there. But as far as the information that you're giving out there, I can pretty much see how it's playing out into the reality, and I just try to stay away from it, and also try to give the knowledge out to people that actually want to hear it, because that's my biggest thing right now. People really don't want to listen. Like, they don't want to hear it.
For sure. I mean, we definitely face that on all sides, and I do know one thing, though, is the way that the world is going, just by how we know the artificial currency itself now being a complete solution for what people really need, they're ultimately going to end up coming into the hands of truth anyway. And so it's almost like our duty here, maybe we should always start to think of not necessarily enjoying it this lifetime, but building it up completely so that our children have an opportunity to. But when they are ready to make that decision to know what the higher level involves, that is readily available to them, that is really one of the major things that I wanted to put it into, because when I went through my spiritual transformation, I really could not find that much information about a play-by-play of what I was experiencing at all. The Resistance has done the right of actually allowing people to pass through that, and maybe that's a rite of passage, just like a connection from this world to the next level that some of us are going to be going to, or at least enough information about a person getting more solid about where they're really going. And everyone's different, and that's why I really understand that this reality was to show a person how far they can get by being by themselves. And the other one is how much you can do it together, like how much you can really be. And that's with the connection with this earth, because you see all these trees, you see all these different type of things that are connected to the earth. We have an opportunity to join them, and that's what brings the biggest ally on that side. Because remember, like Nima was saying, that the earth it's responsible for bringing forth the plant life and becoming the womb for man, and man also, I pointed out, was also learning a major lesson here from woman. And so all that connection, when we meld with it more and bring it within us more to really know that we're doing it, it's like, okay, you're living this life, and that's when we find one of our highest levels of connection here. It's like that's what's so beautiful about this, is because people are still connected to it by just being alive. Like if you're here, you're breathing, you're connected to earth. You put it in your body, you can live off of it. So that means that there's already somewhat of a connection established. All the person has to do is understand how to turn that connection on higher. So it's almost like someone that you may have not talked to for a while, and you need to reestablish that relationship. And there's like walking in on great-great-grandmother. Like, how do you really start if you never met her? And that's
I definitely understand. Definitely.
That's what's going on, brother. Like I said, I do appreciate you calling in. We got about 1 more minute in the show. I'm going to just let everyone know, if you can, it does help us a lot if you press, I guess that's 1 after the show. It does allow the show to be ranked higher on Blog Talk Radio to listen to that. I also want to let everyone know that next week is going to be a powerhouse week for us. We're going to have a lot of stuff coming out. And this show, which is just the premiere, is actually going to be done through Justin TV, where you get a chance to see us here. You'll get a chance to see me on the board, and it'll make a lot more of this cohesive. And it'll also keep me on track, because I have a lot of visual and I have a lot of visual ways of showing people what I'm talking about, rather than just my conversation. Because everyone should know I write a lot better than I talk. And so I wanted to again say wholeness and balance vibration to everyone, and thank you for calling in to Esoteric Radio. I also wanted to give a big thanks to the guys in the studio, all the people that are out there supporting the resistance, brothers, sisters, mothers, all over the place. Like, I've been connecting with everyone. It's just been a great response, so I wanted to send that respect and that honor. And also I wanted to let everyone know that, once again, that energy is available for you. There are some really, really powerful things going on in the spiritual realm. There's nothing like it inside of your body when your body is completely powered up and you're connected with that pure energy. Wholeness and balance.